Fridays. I am in the mood to try out a couple of new things today, and so you're going to kind of explore with me and see if they work. Today I'm using all Liquitex Basics paint, and just happened to be on sale, and I got a couple of colors that I don't already have. Usually I tend to stay really safe. I like the blue and whites. I do a lot of blue and white combinations of variations of blue and different brands of paint. I love golden. I love Holbein fluid, and I like the Liquitex Basics. I like some of the other Liquitex heavier body as well that I've used that are a little more expensive, and it just depends on what I'm in the mood for, but I tend to really like blue and whites when it comes to pours, and so today I'm going to go a little bit experimental. I got a green that I haven't used before, and also a magenta, and this one is Quinacridone Magenta, and so I'm going to try that one out. And I do use a lot of orange in my pours anyway, because orange and blue of course are contrasting colors and go really well together, but this is the cadmium orange in the Liquitex, and I haven't used the Liquitex orange before, I don't believe. So the other thing I'm going to be using is, I wanted to experiment. I love metallics, especially when I add the resin over the pours, and I love pouring on tiles, and I'm going to make a set of coasters today, and I love using metallics, and I usually tend towards the golden metallics. I like the golden brand when it comes to metallics. They tend to stay really vibrant when I pour them. But today I'm going to kind of branch out and just take a wild chance, and I happen to have some X Pigments, and these are powdered pigments, so you'll want to wear a mask when you're pouring these out, a little dust mask, because they are loose pigments. But they have a lot of really cool metallics, and I'm going to go ahead and try these out and see if they'll stay in a pour. I don't know that they will or they won't, but we're going to see and give it a try. So I've already added my paint to 2 parts of Floetrol, and this is just my recipe that I'm using currently at the moment, that I am finding works. If I find another sort of pigment, like maybe the X, I might have to alter that recipe and use a different pouring medium or try it with different things. But right now I like 2 parts Floetrol to 1 part paint, and just a little bit of PVA glue, and that's like probably 1/8 of a teaspoon maybe to these paints. So 1/8 of a teaspoon of PVA glue into each color, and it just helps sort of with the drying, and it's the combination that I'm finding is really working well at the moment. I also add a little drop of CRC silicone spray to sometimes some of the colors, sometimes all the colors. It depends on the mood I'm in. So we'll see today what I end up adding them to. So I'm just going to mix these colors all up, and I may or may not have to add just a few drops of water to each cup so it gets to a good pouring consistency. Okay, so I probably have enough paint here for 2 pours. As long as I keep it to that 2-to-1 ratio with the Floetrol, then I'm always ready to have another 4 coasters ready to go for another pour, and can make a different combination of those colors. So I have these, and I may or may not use them all in the first pour, and I really do add the water just a drop at a time, and you can see the consistency running off of my stir stick. It's dripping fluidly. It's not dripping. It's running, and that's the way I want it. But I do it a little bit thicker, so it's not going to all run off of the coaster. So that's why I add the water just a little tiny drop at a time, and make sure that it's really stirred in well. I want to make sure, especially if I'm using a thicker paint, I want to make sure that all those lumps are out, and I don't want to get it so thin that all the pour is going to just run off immediately. And that's a big thing that I'm trying to avoid. So I don't want my paints too thin. And it really does depend on the brand of paint, how much water that you end up using. Of course, in a fluid paint, you might not end up using any water at all. Where a heavier body acrylic paint, you're gonna need to add just a couple of drops more water. So I'm gonna set these aside for just a second. And I have here some white with same thing, 1 part white to 2 parts Floetrol. And to this, I'm going to add some of the Pearl X. This is the Micro Pearl. And I'm just going to add it in there. And it looks as though it has absorbed any metallic at all. It doesn't seem like it's showing through even a little bit. I'm going to try and add one with the Micro Pearl, which I'll add a little bit more. And I might have to wait and see when this dries if any of the metallic comes through there. We'll just wait and see. And that made it a little bit thick though, so I'll probably add just a couple of drops of water. And this may or may not show up. We'll just have to wait and see when it starts to dry if any of that metallic comes out at all. Right now it's looking like no, because I can't see any metallic at all, and I poured quite a bit in there, so we will just see. I'm going to do another one just to completely play here and put just a little bit of Floetrol in there. Let's just see what happens. And put a little bit of this Aztec Gold. Let's just see what happens. Let's play around with it. Never know until you try. It might just turn everything yellow ochre. We'll see. Now that I can see the gold. I can definitely see metallic. It's not just yellow. It's a pretty nice consistency. I don't think I need maybe 1 drop of water just to get out any lumps. Maybe it just needs to be stirred for another minute. Add 1 little tiny drop of water. Just so it's a nice consistency. And that helped a lot. Just that 1 little drop of water really helped smooth it out though. But that's nice and metallic. So I'm going to get 1 more cup, and I'm going to try that with that Micro Pearl and the Floetrol and see if I can't get some sort of the same metallic. You can see on the stick there that that gold is really coming through. So I'm going to get 1 more little cup and try just the Floetrol and the Micro Pearl and see if I can't get this same metallic goodness to come out. Okay, so we're going to try this again. I've got just a little bit of Floetrol, and I'm going to try that Micro Pearl. I'm You can see that dust coming out, so you want to wear a dust mask. Now that I can really see the pearl shining through, and I will need a little drop of water. Now maybe the white just drowned out that sort of metallic, whatever metallic additive is in that, but that I can still, with just the Floetrol, I can see the pearlescence of that micro pearl right there. So that's good. I'm going to use that. Okay, so I have my tiles here in my pouring tub, and I have another 4 ready to go if I need them, with an overage of paint, and I've already cleaned my tiles off with the isopropyl alcohol just to clean off any oils from my hands and or any dust or residue from when the tiles were in a warehouse or what have you, that they are nice and clean and ready to accept a pour. So I like to pour the white first usually, and I like to use quite a bit of white. I like it as a negative space, to use it as a negative space background in my pours. And today I'll just pour it. I usually change up how I pour it. I'll just pour it right in dead center in the middle. And just get some of my background going there. Plenty left over if I need it. And I'm going to do a dirty pour and just start pouring some of this color in. And pour some of that pearl. And maybe a bit of the gold. I'm thinking that's looking really pretty. It's interesting. It's different than my normal. Some more white. Very different than my normal colors that I go with. I'm going to pour in the rest of that pearl. And I'm really anxious to see how that pearl comes out in the pour. And I'll use some of the other, what was supposed to be pearl but wasn't, and we'll see how that comes out. And maybe just a little bit more pink. Top it off with some of the gold. Okay, and with the white on there, that's about enough for these 4 coasters. I have plenty of paint left over for a second pour. So I'm just going to go ahead and I do each one just a little differently. So they're the same colors, but with a completely different pattern on them. This one's got a lot of gold on it. And I can actually see the pearl, some of the pearl shining through, and I'm going to see if I can get just a little bit more of it showing, but I can see quite a bit of the pearl here on this one laced through it. And this ended up being another good experiment because I forgot to add silicone. So I usually always do pours with some sort of silicone additive, some sort of additive that's going to create cells, and this time I did not because I forgot. So this is also a good lesson learned. I usually do pour them quite high and get some air incorporated into them. So any cells that are created are probably from just air being incorporated into the paint. But there's lots of actual cells here, especially in the gold one here. There's quite a few cells interlaced through, and again, the gold in through here, and also here with the micropearl. So perhaps the Pearl X powders are creating cells. That could be because as of now anyways, when they're wet and not dried yet, but as of right now, the place that I see cells created the most are all in the areas where the most micropearl, the most Pearl X powders, the most Pearl X powders have been added. That's where I'm seeing the most interlacing of sort of lacy cell work going on, is all where I see either the micropearl or the Aztec gold predominant in the pour. So maybe the Pearl X powders created the cells themselves, and I do not know the science behind that, but it seems to be with this experiment that is what is happening. I'm going to go ahead and torch it just a little bit to get any air bubbles out and see if any more cells pop up. Okay, so really surprisingly, I got quite a bit of cell action going when I just torched it lightly, and that I think is probably due to that usually does not happen once I get most of the cells after I pour. It's just a matter of popping the air bubbles. With this particular recipe that I'm currently using, I don't get a lot of actual cell action when I go ahead and torch out the air bubbles, and in this case I did. And I think it actually is really due to the Pearl X powders. There's something to do with the Pearl X powders is the only different thing that I've done here, the different element in the equation. So I'm kind of excited to try the Pearl X powders out in another pour and see if the same thing happens. Okay, so I have enough paint for a second pour, and I'm just going to add a little bit of one different element, and that is a different a Pearl X powder, and this is the gray lavender. And I'm going to go ahead and add that to the Floetrol. Just kind of playing around today and seeing what fun can happen here. So that's a really pretty, this is gray lavender in the Pearl X, and this is just Pearl X and Floetrol. It's a pretty good consistency. I'm just going to add a little drop of water. Okay, pour number 2. And I know right away that I'm going to use the Pearl X Gray Lavender and also the Pearl X Gold that I have left over here. I know I'm going to use those in the pour for sure. It's just a matter of, I have a little bit left over of everything. So to decide, I know I'm going to use the white for sure. And I think this one would look good. Sort of turquoise would look good with the lavender. Not sure about the orange there. Maybe just a tad of the blue. Let's try the pink. There's quite a bit of the pink left over. I think I'll use these, the pink, the turquoise, and the gold and lavender. So again, I'm going to pour in my white. I'll just kind of randomly get a little white going on each tile. And start pouring my colors. I have quite a bit of this pink, so it's kind of gonna dominate. And that really pretty lavender. That's looking really pretty. And some gold. Waste any of that good gold. And there's quite a bit of pink in there this time, where this turquoise sort of dominated last time. So we'll see how that works out. I think I have a little bit more white. Oh, and I have some of the white pearl. Add some of that as well. Okay, let's see how this goes. It's the first time for several of the colors, and then also first time for the Pearl X, especially the lavender gray, so we'll see how that comes out. The gold and lavender, so far that lavender is dominant. It's going nicely with the pink. And I like it when there's quite a bit of negative going on. I don't like it quite so overall busy. And I love how on these coaster sets especially that you can use the exact same colors and have each one be so different, but yet it's still such a pretty set. And these tiles are so thin, I kind of just touch up most of the edges as I go. But then there's always a final check to make sure all those edges are clear or covered. Always save a little bit just in case. Okay, and I love when I'm making a set of coasters, especially when I'm making a set or a series, that some of them are really busy and then some of them are more sparse with a lot more negative space, but having still those hints of the same colors that are in the busier patterns. And I really like that when I'm creating a series. So I'm not going to add any more to that. And a lot of times I'll actually try to create some more negative space by tilting it and bringing a lot of that white back into it, and maybe letting some of the dominant colors run off to sort of create some more negative space. And I think it just makes for a really interesting collection, and that's how I like to work my series. I'm going to go ahead and give these just a little torch. Okay, so here they are done, and in this case, I am pretty convinced that it is the Pearl X powders that are creating all those cells. A lot more cells popped up again. Well, cells came out when I just poured it, and again, these don't have any silicone added to them at all. So no silicone and just the Floetrol, the paint, and a little bit of water. So this has quite a bit of cells for that, and I really believe that the Pearl X powder is what is contributing to causing these cells, because pour after pour after pour after pour, I almost never get, in this particular recipe that I use, I almost never get extra cells when I'm torching it. It's usually just maybe a few here and there, a few tiny ones, nothing, no big deal. And basically I'm just getting the air bubbles out. In this case, lots of lacy webbing has popped up, and also much larger cells here in the gold. And all the areas where the gold is dominant, you can see a much larger cell action going on, and then that tiny lacy cells that were added after the torching. So quite a bit of cell action here with no silicone or additives whatsoever, and except for the flow pouring medium, which is the Floetrol. And I use that in my standard recipe. Floetrol is another standard ingredient in my recipe that doesn't cause all these cells after I torch it. So I'm pretty sure that it's the Pearl X powder. Don't know why, but like it. And so it ended up being a great discovery experience. And I don't always like so many cells like over in this one. I like more of contrast with the actual colors. And in this case, there's a lot of little cell webbing, but the green, the turquoise got pretty lost in it, and not a whole lot of drama with contrasting colors, which I like almost better than the cells. But it was a great learning experience. It was a great learning experience that Pearl X can be used for metallics, and also that it causes cells. So I hope you had fun with this and discovered something along with me with the Pearl X powders today, and see you next Friday. Happy Fluid Fridays.